Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 192. And this episode, you may be looking at things a little bit differently. And if not, you might want to adjust your slider, because we've entered the third dimension. Today, we are doing our retrospective on the Nintendo 3DS, the last truly handheld exclusive system that Nintendo put out, and kind of the end of an era as far as handheld gaming goes, but one that we certainly love. And to help us commemorate, remember, and commiserate, I suppose, about this wonderful handheld, we are joined by Jared Moss from the Play Along podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome, Geoff, Matt, thank you so much for having me on. I'm a huge fan of Fun and Games and what you all do over here, and I'm honored that I get to talk about this fun little console, this little Nintendo console, the 3DS. I'm very excited.
Before we jump into the console, I would love you to just give folks a brief description of like what the Play Along Pod is and what you guys do over there.
Yeah. So over at Play Along Podcast, myself and my other two co-hosts, Kai and Ben, we play through games in kind of a book club format. What we do is we will take a game and we will break it down into sections. Each of us take turns choosing a game, and then we come together and talk about that game every other week. And we spend like upwards of 2 months talking about a single game, so we really go into detail with, the specific sections and all of the narrative and the art and the music and everything like that too. And it's really fun because all three of us have a very wide range of game genres that we like. So we've played everything from like classic 90s RPGs to indie games to AAA titles. We've really kind of run the gambit and kind of played everything. The other thing as well on our podcast, which is our kind of larger side series we have, is called Get Wrecked, where ourselves and a guest swap video game recommendations. Matt's been on an episode of that too, and that's been a lot of fun as well. But yeah, that's Play Along in a nutshell.
It's a great show. I've gotten guests a few times.
Yeah.
I was on your Hades episode where it was just a one-shot discussion.
Yep.
I was on the Get Wrecked with Ben. I was given a Plague Tale, and I gave him, do you remember what I gave
Solar
Ben to
Ash.
play? Solar Ash,
Yeah.
right.
Nice,
and that was
nice.
a fun chat. And Jared and I are already plotting. We've got other plans, but I'll be
yeah.
back. And I did Eternal Strands.
Yeah, we talked about
with,
Eternal Strands
CG
too.
Danny B,
Yeah.
which was also a one-shot episode that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Thanks for joining us, Jared.
Yeah, so
I'm really
excited.
excited to talk about the 3DS. It's one of my favorite handheld consoles, and anyone who listens to the show for any amount of time knows Geoff and I are hardcore shills for any handheld. We have a lot of handheld bias. We have a preference for handheld consoles. We're also commuters who live in New York, so there is kind of a tie-in there.
I also just like bags and pockets, and
Yes.
it's, look, a Switch, a Steam Deck, you can make it work. And you do
Yes.
make it work. The Switch 2 is going to be even bigger than the Switch, but there's just something nice about a handheld, okay?
Yeah.
I've said it before too, and I prefer handheld gaming. Like a lot of the time, my Switch is like 90% handheld that I do. Like I love handheld gaming, which is why I love the 3DS so much too.
Yes.
Undoubtedly.
So before we get into more details about the 3DS, of course, some initial stats. First released in Japan, February of 2011, in the EU in March of 2011, and then North America also in March of 2011, 2 days later, which is very interesting.
Strange.
And then at the end of March in the AU. And then the 3DS XL came out about a year later in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And then there have been like a million versions in between, and we'll get to that.
So many.
Yeah, the Nintendo 3DS is one of those consoles that I remember the launch of very vividly. It was in an era of when I was getting consoles at launch. I didn't always, but for the Game Boy Advance, the DS, and the 3DS, I got all the handhelds basically at launch. I remember being leery of the 3D because I had been to my fair share of 3D movies at that point. I think we all were on some level.
Yeah.
But I was just excited to get a new handheld with better graphics when I saw that it could basically play almost PS2 level graphics on it. I was like, I'm hyped. It still to this day kind of blows my mind that the original DS was able to play Mario 64 when I grew up playing Mario 64 on a TV. This is, I think, the height of that transition of like, this was a console game and now I can play it handheld. I mean, now the Switch and the Switch 2 take that to the extreme, and that'll be a different conversation.
But those are consoles.
Right.
They're hybrid consoles as opposed to this being a handheld that could play older console games. It's hard to quite remember what games I got at launch. There was a Mario game at launch, wasn't there, for the 3DS?
3D Land. I think 3D Land was the one that launched with
that was it.
I don't think that was a launch title.
Okay.
Well, because one of the big difficulties with the 3DS when it first launched was it didn't exactly have a strong launch library. Between that and the high price tag, there was a price drop that happened just a few months later in July, necessitating the Ambassador program.
And so actually that reminds me, because I didn't get the Ambassador program, I didn't get it at launch. I must have gotten it much later. I still got the original console, but I remember being jealous of my friends who invested at launch and got into the Ambassador program and got games like Metroid Fusion and a bunch of games for free, basically, in the Ambassador program. It was a bunch of Game Boy Advance and Game Boy games, I think.
Yes, it was. And they were, so the full list on those, there were 10 NES Virtual Console games. So Super Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong Jr., Balloon Fight, Ice Climber, The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, NES Open Tournament Golf, Wrecking Crew, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, and Yoshi. And this was also a big deal of having had Virtual Console on the Wii, and then the 3DS was what brought it to handheld. So that was an even further idea. And then there were 10 exclusive Game Boy Advance Virtual Console games. These were never released on the eShop for any other 3DS user. F-Zero Maximum Velocity, Yoshi's Island Super Mario Advance 3, The Legend of Zelda The Minish Cap, Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, Mario Kart Super Circuit, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, WarioWare Inc. Mega Micro Games, the original WarioWare, Metroid Fusion, and Wario Land 4. Like, that alone, those are banger after banger.
What a lineup.
And if there's one you don't like, who cares? Next one, banger.
Yeah. So this actually jogs my memory. You have to remember, kids, old folks like us have trouble keeping these facts straight. I should probably write them down. So my game that I got with the console was Super Mario 3D Land. Super Mario 3D Land is the game that made me want to buy the console because it was a 3D Mario on a handheld, and I was very excited for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you were impressed by Steel Diver or Pilot Wings?
I know.
I do remember the launch being a little lackluster.
Yeah.
I do remember also getting Star Fox 3D, and I also got Mario Kart 7 because Mario Karts were basically all bangers from the N64 on at varying levels, but there hasn't really been a bad Mario Kart game.
Yeah.
And 7 was one of the better ones. And I remember just loving the system from the beginning. I remember dabbling with the 3D in the beginning, but as a glasses wearer, a lot of glasses wearers often had issues with the way the image was projected. It just gave me a headache. And so I spent a lot of my history with the 3DS playing it in 2D mode. I would turn it on like when I got a new game just to see, oh, I wonder how it looks. But then shortly after that would kind of retire back to the 2D version. And I've owned multiple versions over the years. So my current one is a new 3DS. I don't think it's an XL. It is an XL. So I have a 3DS XL because I had regular 3DS launch red 3DS, but I believe it died. I feel like these were more fragile than previous handhelds because I know lots of folks who went through them. It's a good transition to you, Geoff, because you were saying off the air that this is actually the console you've had the most versions of. So tell us a little bit about how you first got the 3DS.
Well, the 3DS, I also didn't get it at launch. The Nintendo DS was a handheld that I championed. Certainly in its early days, even when I didn't have it, I was like, this is amazing. The 2 screens is fantastic. The touchscreen, the possibilities that are going on here. This was up against the PSP, and history has run its course on that. And so the 3DS, exciting, cool, confession time, I can only see out of one eye.
Oh, man.
This is an honest, true fact about me. Okay, I can kind of see out of my left eye, but I was born legally blind in that eye. I have learned how to approximate depth perception. Kind of. Everything has an aura. With or without glasses, this is just what it is.
You gotta just feel out the vibes, you gotta just feel it out.
I had to figure everything out by vibes my entire life. So the notion of a 3D slider, I played with it. I could kind of see what was going on. I could see enough of a change, and I played with Magic Eye as a kid to make it try to work, but it wasn't doing it for me. And so it needed to be the software. And it took a little while for that to kick in. I wish I could tell you what was the game that made me do it, but I do know that the 3DS that I got, it was the 3DS XL, and it was the one that had the NES controller on the front of it. And both of you know that because we were showing them off before we started recording. Because the Game Boy Advance SP that I had was the NES edition.
Oh, nice.
So it just felt right. It felt like lineage, That was one where the shoulder joint on this is broken. So by that point, I had gotten a new Nintendo 3DS, and by that, it was new in the box, but it was also the new Nintendo 3DS model, which is one of the more confusing things. I rag on Xbox for how they name their consoles, but Nintendo is not off the hook with what they did with the 3DS. But I got a new Nintendo 3DS that got a small bit of water damage that just unfortunately killed it. So nowadays I have a new Nintendo 2DS XL, the one that you can actually fold, because the original Nintendo 2DS was red. But there was some brilliance in that design.
The doorstop, one of the little door wedges.
Yeah. And I mean, the smart part about that was because they were just using an entire touchscreen to be both screens, and then the plastic housing divided it, which was a lot less expensive, and that was why they did the 2DS. Removing the 3D slider and using one screen actually made it cost-effective. It was also ugly, and I didn't need it. So I don't do that. All of that tumultuousness aside, that 2DS is a regular part of my travel now. The 3DS is a console, is a handheld that I kind of have that, I almost start to forget how much I like it. And then I start to try to make a list of games I like from it, and then I can't stop. Or I'll get back into it for one reason, and then just it stays with me. Like, I'm in a phase right now because I was getting ready for this episode, and I was just like, God damn it, this thing is amazing.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk more about that, but it was a later adoption for me. I was happy when a 2DS could fold. I played with the slider a little bit. So yes, it is slightly non-genuine to say that I can only see out of one eye, but I mostly 99% see out of one eye. The slider, I could see something's happening, but when people were talking about how Super Mario 3D Land was the game that justified the 3D slider, I'm like, cool.
I've known Geoff for going on 10 years now, and I don't think I actually knew that. If it came up, it came up so long ago that I've forgotten. So
I was that kid who had to wear an eye patch to strengthen one of their eyes.
Oh my God.
Yep.
See, now I'm just like, that's badass. Like, that's cool. But as a kid, even if I had to do it, I'd feel like, oh, I hate
You were Majima before you knew who Majima was.
No. It wasn't a cool eye patch. It was a Band-Aid eye patch. Because my parents, despite knowing that their 6-year-old, if you explained to them why I needed to do something, I would do it. And I would explain to people, no, don't touch that. But they were like, no, put the bandage on. And they tried to make it cooler by letting me put sparkly dinosaur stickers on it.
Oh, man, that is cool. I think that's cool.
But then again, my ass is explaining to kids, like, what happened to your eye? I have a condition called amblyopia. And I'm like going off, which also is exactly why I'm a video game podcaster now.
I mean, basically, yeah. Turns out the bullies get madder when you explain things. That's a whole other conversation.
A whole other conversation.
So anyway, this has everything to do with the 3DS.
Yeah. Jared, what about you? Did you get the 3DS at launch?
No, so I ended up getting the 3DS a couple years later. I think 2014 is when I grabbed mine. But when the 3DS initially launched, so I'm a little younger. So I was a sophomore in high school when the 3DS initially launched. And out of my whole gaming life, I would say that this era was probably the only time that I've taken a quote unquote hiatus from gaming, right? I started doing sports, I started dating a girl and everything like that, and those things ended up becoming my focus, but I still would do gaming here and there. Not only that, but the DS was still going strong. I'm a huge Pokemon nerd, and just 4 or 5 months before the 3DS launched, Pokemon Black and White came out. That was the first Pokemon game that I got at launch as well. So I was still in the DS ecosystem, and the 3DS was, backwards compatible as well. So I still could have played that. But I was still very much in the DS ecosystem. And like Geoff was saying, I don't think there was a lot that I remember seeing from the 3DS that was really bringing me to want to or feel like I need to have this brand new console. Come around where 2012, 2013, when I started following games more is when Pokemon X and Y started coming out. So when the rumors were coming out and more news and trailers were coming out for that, and then I was like, oh, I have to have a 3DS. This is the first 3D Pokemon game. There's no way that I could skip this and not have a 3DS at this point. I started working around this time too, so now it was I still had to wait to get a 3DS because now I had to buy it myself, essentially. It was around 2014 or so. Pokemon X and Y, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, those games were kind of like the reasons why I got the 3DS in the first place. But like most people, I don't think a lot of people utilize the 3D function of the DS. We went in, we played around with the slider, we moved it up and down, and then we're like, cool, I like this down more. This is better not on.
The time I would mostly turn it on was during Pokemon evolutions in X and Y.
Yes.
Like, you get that cool, like, everything spinning around and it does the whole spiral, and it's just like, this doesn't affect gameplay. This is just a fun thing I'm doing.
And I think that's probably when I used it the most. Not ever on, like, long spans of time. It was like, oh, here's a cool scene. Let me hold in 3D, like, put the 3D on. Obviously, keep my 3DS still, because if you move that thing at all, or you move your body and that 3D is just getting morphed as well. So yeah, I think you're right. I think I did flip it on and on for things like that, like the Pokemon evolutions and everything, but I did not utilize the 3D. And it's funny because Nintendo obviously recognized that, now creating a whole system that doesn't have this feature, which was the big thing, differentiating this from the DS and the 3DS as well too. So they also understood that not a lot of people were actually utilizing this feature. And this 3DS that I was showing you too, this NES one, is the only one that I have. I ended up getting my wife a pink one. We played a lot of Smash stuff together. She played her first Zelda game, A Link Between Worlds, on that 3DS too, which is a lot of fun. I went through multiple iterations of my DS. I had like the big bulky gray one, and I went through a ton of those. But my 3DS it's held on. Luckily enough, I've had this one the entire time. But yeah, that's my history with the 3DS.
So before we move on to one of the most important features of the 3DS, which we'll get to in a sec before we talk games, I just have to comment that it's hard to really look past the fact for me that many of my favorite games in entire series are on this console.
Yeah.
And you mentioned one of them already, which is X. I am very much a very loud proponent of Pokemon X being one of the best Pokemon games ever made.
Yeah.
It's why I'm so excited for ZA, besides the fact of Arceus basically being my second favorite Pokemon game. Yeah. The fact that we're getting a game like that, but in now where X and Y took place. Just beyond excited for that. And then to comment on something Geoff said about, like, there's just a comfort to this console that I get from the Switch. And, like, I often play my Switch. I'm also a handheld Switch player. I lay on the couch and just play it.
95% of the time.
Yep, same.
But there was something special about the 3DS. It's funny. I played my 3DS on and off. Of course, once the Switch came out, even though they were releasing a few games for the 3DS still, I kind of fell off at that point. And I had missed the launch of a game that would become very important for me and something that Geoff and I have talked about on other podcasts. But Metroid 2, or Metroid Samus Returns, the remake by Mercury Steam, like, I blew past that. It came out after the Switch was already out. I was like, oh, why isn't it on the Switch? Whatever. I don't play my 3DS anymore. And then, of course, like several years later at this point, in a direct during the pandemic, oh, hey, who knew? Here's a brand new Metroid game, Metroid 5, in your favorite series, the 2D Metroid games. We're finally getting it, the sequel to your favorite Metroid game of all time.
Yeah.
It's by that studio who did the remake of Returns. I immediately tried to buy it online, which was a mistake because they marked up to hell.
Oh, yeah.
So the eShop was still around at the time. I downloaded it, bought it, and then my spouse Sarah and I had gone away for the weekend with Sarah's brother and wife, Sarah's parents, and the kids, I think 2 of our nibblings. And we were just like, it was this house outside the city. We were going to like go hang out at this cabin, go hiking, whatever. I brought my Switch, but I also brought my 3DS, and I just bought Samus Returns. I spent the entire weekend when I had downtime, like just playing Samus Returns, like outside on the deck, in front of the fire, before I went to bed. There was just something that made this console feel like home, and that moment is a very big one. But before we get too far into games, we have to talk about Streetpass, because I think
Yes.
So for those who don't know, the Streetpass system on the 3DS was the system where if you left your console on standby, but on, and you walked around, anyone else who also had their console on and on standby, you would exchange a Street Pass where you would see their me, you would find out something about them. They could have like a line or a catchphrase or something about themselves.
And that's about it. It wasn't personal information.
Right. It was just a kind of, hi, how you're doing? And then there were a bunch of games, some that were included and then some that cost extra, that involved the Street Passes. And certain games involved the Street Passes. But ultimately, it was a way to meet people in mass when at events. It became like the thing at PAX.
Yeah.
Like to just wander around with your 3DS in your bag and just whoever you met, you met. Sometimes you'd see friends, all sorts of stuff. It's just a community system that I think was revolutionary at the time and is revolutionary now. And it's a bummer it doesn't exist. I don't know why they don't do it with the Switch. It just seemed like a thing to carry over. I know that Miiverse flopped on the Wii U, which could be part of it. There is nothing like Streetpass.
Yeah.
And there, unless they bring it back, never be anything like it. Like, I at one point got Reggie on my 3DS.
Oh,
now,
that's so cool.
Nice.
could have been actually Reggie, could have been a promo.
Sure.
I don't know. I just know that Reggie, like, I saw Reggie Fils-Aimé's me on my 3DS.
Yeah.
Like, cool things like that. And they did promo stuff, and you could see certain characters and things too. But, like, I just think as far as community generation and, like, fun, quirky things that a video game console can do, I think nothing beats Streetpass. I think it's an incredible system.
And I think that's one of the things where, much like the 3D, and this is something that adds to the identity of a handheld system, I think. Little gimmicks, little things that if you're trying to sell me on an entire peripheral, I might balk. If you were trying to sell me Street Pass for $60, I'd get upset at you. But it's part of the device. It makes it a toy in a good way. And it's something where you can more easily fit a 3DS into more pockets than you can a Switch, despite how much you might carry a Switch around. And it has that commuter feel. It has that social feel. So it doesn't feel so silly when it's like, I don't use the Street Pass a ton, but it's fun to check. I turn on the 3D slider occasionally, but it's fun to check. These are little pieces that create the device.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's interesting too that it's something that's such a like simplistic idea, but yet works so well. And like we were saying, it's essentially just like meeting people as they're passing by. Yeah, exactly. It's a glorified like ping system, right? Where it's like pokes on Facebook, if people remember that. It's it's like that. But it's weird because it brings our this thing that we love in gaming into kind of our everyday, right? People that would commute and people that would do that have their 3DSs on them. And, you know, we're always wanting to share this love for this passion that we have. So it's always awesome. And it's always fun when you would get home from something and you would open up Street Pass and you're like, you got people pinged. You're like, oh, I just went to work or I went to a restaurant or anything like that. And you could see that there were people in those areas that also had a 3DS and that also shared those things as well. My favorite Street Pass memory is I went to one of the last Zelda symphonies that they did, and I beat myself up because I didn't bring my 3DS. But when I went and we were kind of seated a little higher up in the orchestra hall, I can look down and I just see like 3DSs everywhere. And it was such a cool moment of just like sitting in there, gonna hear like Zelda music orchestrated live, and then just seeing large groups of people on Street Pass. And it's awesome. It was such like a wholesome moment.
It's a simple thing to let us know we're part of a community.
Yes, community. That's a great word of putting it, because it's just like it builds this community without needing to put a lot of effort into it, I guess.
And nowadays, as somebody who commutes on the New York City subway, I've been carrying my 3DS around. I got a Street Pass ping not that long ago.
That's cool.
That's a whole nother level of,
oh yeah,
it's still out there. We're still out there. Feels good.
Yeah, totally. It's one of those things that I wish that we had more of. It was perfect for this console, and I think it's really interesting when you think about how it was integrated into games, and like there were specific Street Pass games that you could buy, and all of them were fine. None of them, I think, kind of blew me away.
Yeah.
But they were fun little activities that you could do with this thing that didn't require a lot of thought. And like Nintendo notoriously has terrible online infrastructure. On every console, it's just been the case, basically wholesale. We're recording this the eve of the release of the Switch 2, so I'm hoping that the Switch 2 will be better. I am optimistic with that one.
Fingers crossed.
But like, even in a system where like the friend codes and everything else, which are arduous and terrible, though I understand the purpose of them, I cared more about getting a Street Pass from a friend than getting their friend code. Because
Absolutely.
that was just more fun. And I think that's the thing that's killed me the most about the Switch. And when we talk about it at length, the friend code system sucks. But also, you can only see what your friends are playing. You can't message them. You can't interact with them. Like, it's pointless. It's a glorified gallery. Whereas at least on other platforms, you could do PictoChat or whatever else, or play games online. You can still do that with the Switch, but also the online playing of games is not great either, a la Smash Brothers Ultimate, which is a nightmare to play online with friends. That's the thing I'm most excited about with Mario Kart World Tour and like the newer games on this newer console that has game chat. maybe the online infrastructure will be better. We'll see. But like, there was nothing better than Streetpass, and I don't think there ever will be. It just feels like the most original and unique built-in software that I can think of for not just a handheld, but for a console kind of full stop.
And it feels very true to the original vision of the Game Boy. I know the DS was a third pillar next to the Wii and the Game Boy. This is the lineage of Nintendo handhelds. The Game & Watch was designed by Gunpei Yokoi because he was watching a salaryman on the train just play with the calculator on his watch, just for something to do, something to amuse himself. It started with watching commuters and being, this is something to do in between to fill some joy and some fun into your life.
Yeah.
So something like Streetpass also benefits commuters. It also benefits a social sense that kind of has that contract of, we're not here to have big, long conversations, but also you can feel alone in a sea of hundreds of people. So this is a nice little thing. And Nintendo never fully abandons ideas. The 3DS was not the first time they did stereoscopic 3D. I mean, there was the Virtual Boy, speaking of Gunpei Yokoi, and there were previous games that did it as well, but those were more standalone toy or arcade experiences. So who's to say something like Streetpass won't come back? I'm not holding my breath about it, but I'm not counting it out just yet.
To this day, I think one of the biggest failings of the 3DS is that there was never an official release of like a Virtual Boy collection or like a Virtual Boy, like, you know, NSO kind of thing.
On the 3DS.
Like, I know there are ways to get Virtual Boy games working on a 3DS that you customize on your own, but there's no native way to get it via Nintendo, and that just feels like the hugest missed opportunity. To this day, one of the best Wario Land games ever made is Trapped on the Virtual Boy.
Yeah.
And there are some other really great games on there too. Mario Tennis was really great on there. Like, there are some great games, and like, it just felt always to me like a failing that they didn't find a way to incorporate it into the 3DS.
Yeah, well, especially because like the 3DS felt like it was, you know, again, Geoff said that kind of the first time that we had access to this online software ecosystem shop on a handheld system. And it was kind of the first time that we had like almost a celebration of all of these older Nintendo consoles and games that we can play, right? I'm a big Legend of Zelda guy, and I started originally with Ocarina of Time and mostly played a lot of the 3D ones. I missed a lot of the 2D and the handheld ones, but I played the original Legend of Zelda for the first time on the Virtual Console on the 3DS. The 3DS was the first time that I played through the original Legend of Zelda. So like things like that and giving people the option to access these older kind of tentpole titles is amazing. And like you were saying, Matt, it's a shame that that whole system is kind of lost and it would have been perfect on the 3DS.
This is also the first handheld console where we got other apps. You could watch Netflix on here. You could watch YouTube on here. Like, I wouldn't recommend it. It looks very bad.
Yes. People posted on Tumblr on their 3DS just to flex,
That's
you know?
so funny. Yes. I forgot all those apps were on here.
Web browser. Yeah, like it was the early, like we had some of that on the Wii as well,
Sure.
but it was definitely the first handheld console that Nintendo made that could do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, the shop too. Like the eShop is now like the way to buy games digitally, especially on the Switch, which has kind of merged the two lanes. But like, I do miss having a dedicated handheld. Like it's a double-edged sword, right? We were talking about how this is the last of the dedicated handhelds.
Mm.
On one hand, it was fun to get versions of games that were unique and interesting. On the other hand, it sucked to get games that were poorer imitations of other games that were on console, which is a constant Game Boy and DS thing. But to that end, like now with the Switch, we've got it pushing games onto it that barely function, a la the more recent Pokemon games and The Witcher, which are playable but not pretty.
And I will argue that the 3DS actually got superior versions of a lot of games.
Yes, correct.
Due to its hardware.
Yeah.
So, talking about the Virtual Console, they also sold 3D Classics.
Yeah.
Where they did some 3D embellishments, but other quality of life updates as well for 6 titles that were on the NES and for 8 that were on Sega systems, the Genesis, the Master System, and the arcades as well. Honestly, playing with like Space Harrier and getting 3D aspects on that finally to a super scalar game is wild and fantastic. A key piece of fun and games lore, Shovel Knight.
Oh,
I will argue
yes.
that the 3DS
Yes.
version is the definitive version for me.
And also important, since you brought this up and I was going to mention it, not only important to fun and games lore because it's the game we always talk about, but me liking the franchise. Geoff lent me his 3DS copy of it. I played it, said, I love this game. I'm giving it back to you immediately because they just put it on the Switch, and I'm going to buy the Switch version and play it, and basically played it cover to cover, all the DLC that was out at the time. Like, I became obsessed with it, and it's now gone on to become one of my favorite games of all time, easily one of my favorite indie games of all time. And it started with the 3DS version. All I needed to play was like the first 3 stages and go, oh no,
Like,
I have to give this back to Geoff because this has to be mine. I have to have my version. And it was the earliest days of like there were some indie games on the Wii, but like the Wii U and the 3DS is when we really saw a ton of indie games shine on those shops.
Yeah, well, not only that, but specifically the 3DS. I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, right, the Wii U had lots of good games, it had lots of good things going for it, but unfortunately it did not perform as much as other past consoles. So, and it's probably why we have so much of a fondness and attachment to the 3DS. The 3DS carried that generation for most part. I went back and for this episode, I was watching old Nintendo Directs and presentations, and there's some that are just 3DS games. There's like a handful of Wii U games, but like the 3DS was kind of the main pillar of this generation, and it was supporting Nintendo for so long, too.
Yeah, Nintendo treated the Wii U the way Sony treated the Vita.
Yeah.
They were releasing titles for it, but what about that console over there? Don't look over there.
Don't look over there.
Well, yeah,
the 3DS.
The Wii U is the only Nintendo console I have never owned. It's probably what drives me to want to own it so badly, is because I never owned it.
Yeah.
But like, it was the only era where there were console and 3DS versions coming out, and I could only play the 3DS versions. I think of Smash Brothers, famously, very different from the console version, but like did some cool graphical things to make it stand out.
Different
had
maps.
An exclusive character for a while. Again, poor online. Buying that game for the 3DS was not super fun because I want to play Smash Brothers with my friends, and a lot of my friends had it on the coolest thing they ever did was allowing the 3DS version of Smash Brothers to interact with the Wii U version and be able to play multiplayer that way. Because if it hadn't, it would have been a nightmare. And like, is the only reason I played my Smash Brothers that much.
Not only that, but you bring this up, reminded me of this too. There was an app on the 3DS where you can use your 3DS as a controller playing Smash Wii U as well, which I did that a lot.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Damn.
Crazy.
There again, the convenience of the Nintendo Switch being the hybrid console and it being the handheld that can plug into your TV, amazing. Great. We haven't stopped loving that. I haven't stopped loving that. However, there is something cool, just cool, about the home console and your handheld being separate things that could also communicate with each other in that way. We enjoyed the novelty of it when it was the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube. The DS didn't get to do it a ton with the Wii. And so we got a little bit of that as technology kind of converged for the 3DS and the Wii U. And yes, absolutely, Jared. That was like kind of shoring up as much of the like, more people are playing the 3DS, so let's see what we can do here.
Yeah.
Was probably also a piece of that. But it was still cool to have those interactions.
Yeah, it just feels like a different era of Nintendo, right? And I don't want to say that they've gone away from kind of like the very fun novelty way of doing things, because I think there's a lot to like about the Switch, right? It's Nintendo's best-selling console. It's done fantastic, but there's just something about, like you were saying, kind of the separation between the console and the handheld, the 3DS. And again, I talked about going back and watching Nintendo Directs and a lot of the bits they did with Iwata and Reggie, and like that era and that vibe is just like not present anymore, it feels like, which is why I have like a lot of attachment to the 3DS and the Wii U, because I attach it a lot to that era of Nintendo.
It's a double-edged sword, right? Like when I brought my Switch home and could play Breath of the Wild on it, and when this is a console game that I could play on my TV, and when it first came out, I played it on my TV all the time.
Yeah.
And then I could take it from my TV and take this same exact game and take it with me. That's all I ever wanted from a Nintendo system. But on the other hand, I do miss these dedicated versions, because also some of the best versions of a lot of franchises that I love are on this console. I think about Monster Hunter, a series that I love now, and I got into fairly late. I played the PS2 ones a little, but the one that really sold me on the franchise was Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Friends of the channel, Katie and Robert, shout out to them. We bought it at the same time, and then I went and stayed with them in Philly for the weekend. We just played it all weekend. The three of us sitting on the couch in the same room, not even online, just in the same room playing that game. Those kinds of things, it happens with Switches, but I feel like because Switch leans towards console, but is a handheld as well, but not dedicated handheld, most folks try to play online. Or there have been times where me and three other friends have had our Switches in the same room and played a game together, but it definitely happened a lot less often than when we had dedicated handhelds that we brought everywhere, right? There are milestones like that all across the library for the 3DS that just kind of hit different. Like, I loved Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch. I think it's a good Monster Hunter game. But then Monster Hunter Wilds comes out on modern platforms and on PC, and it blows it out of the water, because I think there's just something about the console experience with that franchise now that's kind of, it's moved away from. But it was a dedicated handheld franchise for quite some time.
Not only that, too, because I just showed on the cam that I have Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate on here, and this was one of the games that I bought, you know, in the big purge right before the eShop went down. And I bought and played this in a post-Rise environment, right? I had played Rise. Rise was kind of like the first Monster Hunter I ever got into. There was a streamer that I was watching that was also a podcaster friend, and they streamed 4 all the time. They loved 4, and I was like, this looks fun. Let me go try it out. And it's just like, it feels very different, but it's so much fun. Like, it's very different from Rise and everything. But again, it has like this novelty playing it on the 3DS. And like Matt was talking about, some of my favorite games in series, Kirby Planet Robobot is kind of one of my favorite Kirby games. Planet Robobot is so good.
So that's the one I bought when the eShop was shutting down. I posted on Twitter, hey, the eShop's shutting down. I can't buy a ton of games, but what's the one? And Reb Valentine, previous guest of this, writer for IGN, one of the coolest people on the planet, said, Matt, I know you love Kirby. You have to play Planet Robobot. It's one of the best Kirby games ever made.
God, yeah.
Which feels like hyperbole to me, because I love Nightmare and Dreamland on Game Boy Advance. I love Epic Yarn. Like, I love so many Kirby games. Forgotten Land gives it a run for its money, but Planet Robobot, I think, is the best Kirby game ever made. And it's such a weird pitch, right? Kirby plus mechs, and the mechs can get power-ups. And I'm like, is this really the best Kirby game? And having played it and actually having the urge to replay it, it absolutely is. Like, full stop, there's no Kirby game with a better story, which is just as unhinged as the other stories. And like, graphically, it's impressive. The mechanics all work. The mechs feel natural and easy to use. Like, it's just on another level.
It has a sense of feel that no other Kirby game has, because Kirby is a platformer and action game, but one that is floaty. And one that's not out of your control, but it feels light. Kirby can fly when he needs to. This is for ease for younger players. And the mech moments, they build in that heavy plod, that big movement, the kinetic feedback without any rumble of motion doing that. And so they design stages and challenges around both feels and both ideas. You get this very full experience. You can play short stages and replay them to try to get the specific code cubes that you need for whatever you need to unlock. It's a complete breakfast kind of feeling, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
No other Kirby game I've played did that quite as well.
Yeah, you guys nailed it. Like, Kirby, like I said, Forgotten Land is close. Like, Forgotten Land is so much fun. But
Forgotten Land's so good.
So good. But I loved Planet Robobot. And it was like the spectacle and like the visuals of it too were interesting. Like, this was the one that Kirby had like the crazy suck ability and everything like that. And again, being able to like give powers to the mech. Like, it's crazy.
Right. Like, I love Superstar. I love Superstar Ultra, and that's fun because, I mean, I know it was originally a Super NES title, but that was made for handhelds. That mini game style, that like pick up, put down little bit, that's a buffet. You choose the experience you want there, and they tailor it for each one, and that is so good.
Yeah.
But Robobot is just like, well, I'm going to play this linear adventure. Let's go. And they pack it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those consoles also, like, nobody's praising Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. Me neither. Like, I like it.
Sure.
It's good.
It was just...
what made it better than it was for me was, this game that I love on the GameCube that was never on a handheld, I can now play
handheld. Yeah.
Like, that's all it
and
took,
designed
right?
to be, not just happens to be.
Yes.
And like the fact that it was mission-based made it better for a handheld. Like, I have not bought the Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon remake for the Switch, though I'm tempted to have them all on one console, because eventually the first one's going to come to the GameCube NSO. But like, there was something special about this game that I had only associated with consoles and like much later generation of consoles that I was like, now I have a handheld version of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about also talking about definitive versions, the remake of both N64 Zelda games on the 3DS are some of the best looking Zelda games, 3D Zelda games. And the definitive way, I think, to play those games. The N64 version is still fine. Like, it's fun, but I think there's something special about that 3DS remake. And then they did that a bunch. Some more successful than others. The Superstar Saga version on 3DS is awful.
Yeah.
It kind of mutes the entire game in a way that I'm not happy about. But then you've got Donkey Kong Country Returns, and I didn't have a Wii U, so it was that was a Wii game.
That was a Wii game. Tropical Freeze was Wii U.
Right. I was just excited to have, again, this Wii game that I love, handheld, and it looked great. It looked great on the console.
I mean, you were talking about like the Legend of Zelda games, and that was a big one for me. Ocarina of Time, I put forward as like the game that kind of got me into a lot of the video gaming and everything, that 3D world. The idea of being able to play that handheld and, visual overhaul and a lot of quality of life stuff, that and Majora's Mask too, both of those being able to like play handheld, I was like, oh, chef's kiss, this is perfect.
And sometimes when you do a remake or a re-release of a game, you realize how far things have gone since then, how far things have evolved. And I would argue Legend of Zelda is such a wild case where that happens, but not where you expect. I mean, yes, have the graphics aged great from Ocarina of Time? No, they haven't. They were cutting edge at the time.
Sure.
And this is what you get with cutting edge. We talk about this all the time. The sharpest edge dulls the fastest. But also, Majora's Mask and honestly Ocarina of Time primarily was moving forward so much in how they were telling stories. Certain aspects and ideas and ways that they were kind of hodgepodging to make a cinematic experience on the N64, the age on that shows fast. But the thing is, it's not the fact that it's bad. It's that it's smaller than you realize. And so putting it on a handheld, and you don't even have to make it mission-based or anything else. It actually is, that's exactly where it belongs. And the quality of life updates for Majora's Mask make it a little more readable. Not text-wise, but just what they want from you. And still that idea of doing the 3-day cycle, start again, is again, handheld play session. This was exactly where they needed to go.
I'm like processing like emotions and stuff in real time as you're saying this. And you're so right, because Ocarina of Time felt like this huge expansive world when I was playing it as a kid. And, I had very limited game experience too, so that also contributed to that. But, on further replays as I got older, I still loved playing Ocarina of Time for that nostalgia, and it always had that feeling for me. But like you said, it had this feeling of being small. Now you put that on the 3DS, and it kind of shrinks it down again, but it makes it in a more digestible feel, especially in Majora's Mask, like you were saying. I feel like I never actually beat Majora's Mask on N64. When I was a kid, the 3-day cycle, I just couldn't wrap my head around it.
It was nuts.
It was nuts.
We beat it like last year. Sarah and I beat it like the last year or two on the N64 because that's what we had with copious guides. Only way we could do it.
But playing it through on the 3DS, like you said, it's almost perfect for this like grab and go mentality, right? You open your 3DS, you're like, okay, here's all the things, here's all the side quests I want to do on day one. Close the 3DS, go about your day and everything like that. It felt perfect for that.
I got to think about this for a second. Wait, what am I doing next? Let me just close the 3DS so it won't hurt me. And think about what my next move is.
That's so funny.
Makes it digestible.
Yes. I'm going through here, and I have a list of just like every 3DS game, and I'm going through them. And I'm just forgetting some of the like wild games that were on the 3DS. I remember one of the ones I enjoyed a lot was Dragon Ball Fusions. I'm a big Dragon Ball Z guy. And this one, you could literally like fuse any two characters together, even if they were never canonically able to fuse. So that always like created some weird characters that you can build. And the other one, I don't know if you guys remember, but Codename Steam.
I do remember Codename Steam.
That being really big is kind of like this weird new IP, turn-based kind of steampunk. There were so many of those kind of titles on the 3DS.
And again, fusions, this is not, 3DS did not invent the concept of playing with your properties like they're action figures, but it is funny to think about all the good ways they did that. I was a big fan of the Project X Zone games.
Ooh, okay.
I think there were 2 of them. They were on the 3DS. It was Capcom just throwing every character they had into anime nonsense, the adventure.
Yes, I love that.
Just like, do you want to have Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield versus Phoenix Wright and Maya was the girl's name there. I haven't played a lot of Phoenix Wright, and I need to remedy that. And they're dealing with things, and it's just like a lot of button mashing nonsense. And I haven't played that in a while, and I think I need to go back to it. I'm now reminded. It was just sheer joy. I got it because it had Segata Sanshiro. Because, there was also Sega. It was Sega and Capcom, so it was a bunch of those. And so I got to have the mascot from the Japanese advertising campaign for the Sega Saturn. That was how I found it, because I'm a big Segata Sanshiro fan.
Wild. Yeah, I mean, it has such a unique library. Also think about how Fire Emblem barely existed in the States, and then they got 2 gangbuster games on this console, which admittedly I have still not yet played.
Awakening was it never went down in price because it's too good, and that's why I never bought it.
And I'm sorry, it's 3 games, because there's Fire Emblem Echoes, Fates, and Awakening, all on this. And like, a lot of people give Three Houses a lot of credit, and I do too. Three Houses was my first Fire Emblem game, but 3DS was the growth that then led to now Fire Emblem being a household name.
Yeah.
Because it just wasn't really big in the West. I think about franchises that just came out of retirement on this console. Kid Icarus, which hadn't had a game in so long.
Yeah.
And Uprising still has not been ported. Speaking of peripherals, this game came with a peripheral,
That's right.
so your hand wouldn't cramp while playing the game. It brought a franchise where Kid Icarus Pit had been in basically all the Smash Brothers games after the second one, but like hadn't been in a game in forever, and finally got a new game, and it was, from all accounts, like I hear people really love that game. It's flawed, but really love it.
How 3DS?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think about how I loved Mario and Luigi Dream Team. It's not Alpha Dream's best game in the series, but I really liked it. I liked the Dream World stuff. I liked that Luigi was the focus and that his unique mind is why they were able to do stuff. The Bravely Default series, which basically came into existence on this console and was like a new Final Fantasy franchise, basically.
Yeah.
It kind of blows me away, the breadth of not only franchises that got new life on this console, but were born on this console or had some of their best versions. We were talking about Zelda earlier. My favorite Zelda game of all time is Minish Cap. But my second favorite Zelda game of all time is Link Between Worlds. Link to the Past is one of my favorite Zelda games. Admittedly, I haven't played it recently, so it may not have aged as well compared to what I play now, but I love the top-down Zeldas. They are my preference to the 3D Zeldas as much as I like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, although I like Tears of the Kingdom a lot more. Breath of the Wild, mediocre Zelda game in my opinion, but we won't get into that. There's no music in that game. Zelda's all about the music. Anyway, I can't do this. No, I can't do this. But Link Between Worlds, it's a spiritual successor. It's basically in the same version of Hyrule. I mean, I obsessed over this game. It was just so cool. The rental mechanic for the weapons, doing dungeons in any order. It was for the longest time my favorite Zelda game. And the only reason I think Minish Cap beats it out is because Capcom couldn't be beaten in the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance era. They made some of the best Zelda games out there. But Link Between Worlds, I think, is kind of a masterpiece that gets overlooked because it just not as many people played it on the 3DS.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have Breath of the Wild without Link Between Worlds, right? It kind of instilled this mentality of being able to kind of tackle puzzles in any order you want, which is kind of the foundation of what Breath of the Wild was. It's slowly deviating away from that very more linear, traditional formula. And the Link Between Worlds was the start of that, right? Presenting Zelda in a familiar aspect using the Link to the Past world, but giving a new coat of paint and also giving player the options to tackle them. Like I said, the rental system, giving you all the weapons and letting you decide what you want and don't want to use at any one time, which was really cool.
Slowly expanding the problem-solving possibilities until we got to Tears of the Kingdom, while also going kind of back to the original Legend of Zelda, please explore this world.
Yeah, which we see in full force with Echoes of Wisdom, right? That's kind of this perfect amalgamation of both of those traditional Zelda formulas and kind of the new era of the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom style games as well.
I mean, this console did have its fair share of bizarre games and then flops. For every Zelda Link Between Worlds, there was also Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes, which isn't a bad game, but was definitely not one of the better Zelda games.
It was ambitious.
I love Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Dissonance. I know that a lot of folks didn't like it. I thought it was a really fun attempt at a Kingdom Hearts game. It was the first Kingdom Hearts game on a handheld that felt like the mainline game because of the graphics and the gameplay. There's Paper Jam, one of the worst Mario and Luigi games.
Sticker Star.
Sticker Star, also a terrible Paper Mario game. But I think the reason there are so many of those also is because they experimented on this console, I think, in a way that they just didn't in other places. So I also think about how, like, Dragon Quest XI is on this console.
Expressly made for this console.
That's crazy.
Right.
I forgot
It's
about that.
a different version. What really fascinates me about this console is it's the last time I think that Nintendo feels like a toy maker. Again, love the Switch, excited for the Switch 2. The fact that we're getting the mouse control on the Switch 2 gives me hope, right? Because play, like the purest form of play, is what I associate with Nintendo the most. And I feel like they're at their worst when they are trying to make something standard or run-of-the-mill. It's why Kirby Triple Deluxe is a perfectly solid Kirby game, but feels boring. And then you get Planet Robobot, and you're like, this is what I'm talking about, right? And I think that dichotomy existed on this console.
I mean, everyone always had clamored before and had shamed Nintendo and always made fun of them for being kind of like the generation behind kind of console. They are always lacking in terms of like the competitors. And I think because of that, you know, if we're limited, that creates an opportunity to have more creative ideas. Like Matt was saying, there are so many very ambitious things that they tried on the 3DS, right? Some of them landed, some of them didn't. But I think as we start seeing like Nintendo slowly go towards like being in the running with kind of the other consoles, we start to feel a lot of that like novelty go away. And I'm hoping in terms of like Matt was saying, the mouse controls, I hope they do fun stuff with that, right? I hope they do fun stuff that stick, right? Like I think Labo was a cool, fun idea, but I want something that can feel like it's part of this ecosystem and can give us that feeling of just like silly, fun games, because that's what Nintendo does, right? They make fun things.
They make fun experiences and fun play. And I mean, another flop that was on 3DS that I got new for less than $20 not long after it came out, Final Fantasy Explorers. Basically a pseudo MMORPG. It wasn't actually, but it was a multiplayer action RPG you could do. We were lauding Streetpass, but kind of things that were built around online multiplayer or near online multiplayer on the 3DS was a little too far or didn't quite hold up in the same way. Okay, we reached it a little too much. That's fine. We didn't talk about the fact that the 3DS has several cameras on it.
Yes.
There's matched 3D cameras on one side and a face camera on the other. Like, having gone through several models of 3D and 2DS in my gaming life, I have several of those AR cards that you can scan. And how many of us actually played Face Raiders? But they were there. They were fun. And so, I think mouse controls, I want to see what a Switch 2 update for Trombone Champ looks like on the Switch.
Oh, man, that would be crazy.
Like, exactly. It's one of my favorite games. And the fact that the two screens, you know, it's again, how much and how little are you utilizing it? Who cares? What are you doing for your design? The fact that Pokémon doesn't need a second screen?
Yeah.
But screw you, a second screen was so good. Being able to choose all of the menus with the touchscreen beneath you, I don't care if the Switch also has a touchscreen. They're not designing it that way anymore.
Yeah.
No. Playing Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS broke Metroidvanias for me because I could see the map at all times.
Interesting.
So good.
Parts of that game were a slog because of how they remade it. They added stuff. Like, there was a lot of repetition. But always being able to see the map made it never feel like a slog for me because I always knew where I was going. I always knew where I had to pivot. I didn't have to bring up the map. It was just there. And also, Geoff, I wanted, before we got away from it, the augmented reality stuff, like, that was one of the coolest things. Like, you had the cards that would make little things appear. I played a ton of Face Raiders the week I got the system because I didn't have any other games.
That was all there was to play.
And it was very weird.
And we liked it. We loved it.
I would take photos of, like, famous people in magazines and, like, fight their faces
so clever.
Instead of my own.
That's so
like,
fun.
This was what the Game Boy camera was leading us to, everybody.
Yeah, basically. This didn't have as many peripherals as a lot of the other consoles we've talked about, but it did have the Circle Pad Pro. There were multiple iterations of this console, the 3DS XL, the 2DS,
the new Nintendo 3DS, the new Nintendo 3DS XL, the new Nintendo 2DS XL.
So good.
But that speaks also to how successful this console was. It got more refreshes than I think any other Nintendo console in existence because it sold like gangbusters.
Yeah, I mean, the Wii U wasn't doing much here. The 3DS was carrying Nintendo. They were successful, and they held on because of the 3DS.
Yeah, kept it going. Now, I do have to ask, We've been talking about a lot of the bigger games, big, small, whatever. Were there any eShop exclusive games that were ones that you kind of kept going back to? Did either of you play a lot of Box Boy or Harmonite? Pocket Card Jockey and Picross 3D Round 2 were real big ones for me. Listener, if you haven't heard about Pocket Card Jockey, look it up. Look up articles about it that were written at the time. It was as if someone had just sprouted a second head. It's actually a really fun game, and it is bananas and funny.
I still need to play. I played a ton of Box Boy. Box Boy was a lot of fun, cool little puzzle platformer. I remember Pocket Card Jockey being on my radar just because it was developed by Game Freak, and I was like,
and that's what got people looking.
Pokemon Game Freak? They're doing a pocket solitaire horse racing game? What is this?
One where you die at the beginning of the game, and you have to play solitaire to horse race for your soul.
Yep.
That's the setup. That's the story of this game. That's
Pocket Card Jockey. I love video games.
I had no idea I didn't even realize this was on the Switch either. This is on the Switch too.
Oh, that's right.
It's
yeah,
also
they did.
on mobile. That's how I played it.
Wow.
It's on mobile, and it's a pretty fun version. My biggest one, to answer your question, Geoff, I did play a bunch. I never played Box Boy. Still on my short list to eventually play, because I think Box Boy and Box Girl is on Switch.
Yes.
Yeah.
But to make your heart proud, Geoff, the game, the app that I have the most time on that was from the eShop original was Pokemon Picross. I played so much Pokemon Picross because I liked Picross. But now you're telling me I can make pictures of my favorite Pokemon.
And utilizing Pokemon types.
Yep.
As well as the fact that I will say that Pokemon Picross has probably my favorite freemium model I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
It had a slowly refilling energy meter. Every square you filled in used energy, and you could save up what you get from completing stages to unlock more, all of that stuff, or you could pay a little bit to unlock further. And there were certain things where it's kind of okay, I could spend hours and hours of my life, or I could just drop $8. And here was the thing that made it my favorite. Yes, you could spend money on it. It would not allow you to spend more than $30.
Yep.
Once you spent $30, or because all of it was buying the same currency,
right.
And it was like, once you bought this much currency, the rest of it's free.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's
so
awesome.
Essentially, they sold you a $30 game that you could pay what you want for it.
Yep.
I love that. I'm hopeful that several other games have done things like this. I don't imagine Pokemon Picross was the first game to do it. I'd love to know the first game that did it. Please let me know. But I would be so happy if more games did stuff like that.
Yeah. Looking through, because I looked up some of the exclusive eShop games, and a lot of the ones I did play were just the Pokemon ones. I didn't play Picross, but I played a lot of Pokemon Shuffle.
Shuffle
I
was
played
also
I
great.
played so much Pokemon Shuffle.
So much Pokemon Shuffle.
I was in an off-Broadway show, and when I wasn't on stage, I was playing Pokemon Shuffle.
Yeah. Even now, I've seen, because I watch a lot of Pokemon content on YouTube and everything, people still use the Shuffle icons in their YouTube videos now. They're just so damn cute. It was just like a match 3 Pokemon game where you're just matching the It was so fun. It was so good.
It's the only match 3 game I've ever seriously gotten into. And there again, the trappings of Pokemon were what got me going.
Yeah.
I knew weaknesses. This was the time of Mega Evolution, which I will still stand by as being the greatest of all of
It's coming back, baby. Yes. It's coming back.
It's coming back. I mean, no, you're saying Pokemon X and Y first 3D Pokemon. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's amazing. It also gave us outfits. Yes. I love outfits. And it gave us skating tricks. You could use the circle pad to skate around. I could grind. If you spun it around, I would spin while I was going. Do you know how much goddamned whimsy Pokemon X gave me?
So much. And I'm someone, I love outfits and costumes in games. If you tie
I would make outfits for going to the gym. I would make outfits for exploring. I would dress appropriately.
Yes. If you put collectibles and stuff as costumes and outfits, I'll 100% complete your game. I'll do it at any point. And being able to do that in Pokemon just meant that there was a new layer of just customizability. I'm someone that usually doesn't make myself in video games, right? I always like to make a character. I'll go female, I'll do male, whatever. I'll like to do something different. But in Pokemon games, I usually do create myself. And X and Y was the first time that I was able to do something like that. I was able to make a person, a character that I could dress the way I want. I can look the way I want. And that was such a cool feeling.
Yeah.
It's so funny that with Pokemon customization, they have stepped it back a little bit, which always frustrates me. I'm like, no, don't take that away from me. I also find it very funny that I can never start as a ginger.
Nope.
Like,
you have to buy it.
And like, look, there's everybody has some form of like, oh, why do they got to make it so hard for me to make myself? And some people have a lot more of that. And I like that there's more options. Holy shit, I like that there's more options.
Yeah.
It just is very funny to me that for Pokemon, it's just like, really?
Yeah, I gotta pay to be me. I mean, I guess. And then, like you said, they're getting a little better too here and there. My thing was always like the black hairstyles were always awful. Yeah. They were always terrible, and they're always like the extreme hairstyles. It was never just like normal black hair. And again, they've gotten a little better recently, but man, they were not good. They were
caricatures at best.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Not since the Game Boy Advance have we had like kind of a unique version of classic games, but we had the 3D Classics series, which, like the Game Boy Advance and the Nintendo Classics, where you could buy the gray carts that had those Nintendo games on them. This was a similar thing. There was like 10 or 12 of them, and we didn't even get all of them in the States. Stuff like Urban Champion and Excite Bike and the original Kirby on NES, all 3D versions. And admittedly, the 3D was gimmicky at best with these NES games and Genesis games.
But people aren't arguing about the artistic integrity of Urban Champion.
No.
Yeah.
But it was really cool to see them utilize the 3DS in this way to remake these classic games, but use a 3D version.
Oh, yeah. To that extent, some of the other titles, like 3D Excite Bike was super cool.
Yeah.
Or 3D Xevious, which actually did have kind of the two planes gameplay anyway. There again, you are leaning into what it already was doing, and why not?
Yeah, I mean, and as we're like talking here, I'm getting more and more, not only love for the 3DS, but just like, man, I need to play this more. I need to like go back and play a lot of these games. Like, Matt, you mentioned Fire Emblem. I have never played a Fire Emblem game ever. I have Awakening on my docket to play this year because I want to play through a Fire Emblem game, and the 3DS was like the best of them. Like I said, Three Houses was great, but like this kind of was the reason Fire Emblem was on the board and everything like that too. Again, one of the features I love, which we had mentioned earlier, was just some of the themes. Again, being able to customize this experience to have it uniquely yourself. I was showing mine earlier, and I have the Majora's Mask 3D theme, and it plays the song in the background. And when you're going through the icons, it has the sound effect of you going through your inventory in Majora's Mask, and it allows you to personalize and make this a personable experience. And I think that's why the 3DS stood out too, because it felt like it was uniquely mine, and I could make it that way too.
Yeah, I think some of the later new 3DS models, you could actually switch out faceplates. So you could customize it externally, internally. It was your toy. It was your device. It was your gaming. All of that is fantastic. And for me, I tend to go for physical whenever possible, wherever possible, however possible. And the fact that the eShop has closed, and thus we are no longer able to legally access a lot of fantastic titles.
Yeah.
Even if they're on other consoles, we can't get the 3DS version anymore, or we can't get it at all, is frustrating.
Yeah.
And I don't have a perfect solution for that, but I will call it out here, as well as the fact that, I've got a mix of digital and physical games for the 3DS. I started playing it again even before we were getting ready for this retrospective because I finally got a working cartridge copy of Persona Q, Shadow of the Labyrinth, and I was like, time for me to do a P3 playthrough. I did P4 last year. Let's go. And I started playing it and then went, wait a minute. But Cross 3D Round 2, you scamp. And I've been playing that obsessively. Help me. I have to sleep sometimes.
Just see pick cost and you close your eyes at night.
I do. I see blue and orange everywhere.
That's like when I used to play Guitar Hero so much that then I'd go to sleep and my dreams would scroll.
Sarah has a self-imposed rule that she will not allow herself to play Balatro if the sun is down, because otherwise she will play Balatro in her sleep.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Something else we should mention before we start to get to our favorites is this is also the first console generation along with the Wii U where the Amiibos were introduced.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Some of my solo mission has been to get... So I'm never going to collect every Amiibo. Other folks have done that. But I do, as of this moment, own every Metroid Amiibo.
Oh, hell yeah,
hardest
that's
ones
cool.
to get
Nice.
were the Samus Returns ones.
Oh, yeah.
I found the Metroid out of box when I was in Arizona a while back, and then praise Alex Van Aken, a saint among men. When the Game Informer offices shut down, they were cleaning out. Thankfully, Game Informer is back.
Yeah, Game Informer.
Hell yes.
But when they were shutting down the office, he was going through stuff. And then he surprised me at the PAX right after that with the Samus amiibo from that 2-pack because they had it. It's one of those things where, like, I like amiibo. To me, they're toys to collect.
Sure.
Like, I barely at this point use the in-game stuff. I did a lot in the early days, but like now it's most of the time it's an afterthought anyway. Unless you completely gatekeep fast travel in, say, a Skyward Sword re-release to an amiibo, which isn't idiotic at all. Yeah. That said, one of the funniest things was like playing through Samus Returns, and I was starting to struggle as I was trying to beat that game because it gets really challenging towards the end, like most Metroid games do. And then I read somewhere that you get extra energy or E-tanks or other things. Like I think like the Metroid Dread amiibo had some kind of crossover or whatever. I was like, oh shoot. And so like did that, and I understand where amiibos went. I think we're getting more with the Switch 2. They have teased a few that are coming, but they are less frequent. But like, I love them. I think they're great. I think they were really interesting in the 3DS era because you use the touchpad for them. Now with the Switch, like certain controllers don't have the readers in them. You have to use the Joy-Cons. You can't use like the Hori attachments, for example, because they don't have the tech in it. But like as a broad concept and as a collectible, they're just fun to have.
Yeah.
But this console and the Wii U were like their ramp up before the Switch hit, and then they became like basically ubiquitous with every game that came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to treat them like Funko Pops in that I can't allow a single one into my home.
That's probably the best practice, because then once you do, you don't stop. Because I was same
you
as
can justify any of it.
I mean, look at all of the Funkos in the background. Audio listeners can't see, but I have a million.
Yeah, this closet has a box of all the Funkos and different amiibos that I have too. But I was the same way. Like especially when Smash came out too, I was big on collecting them for Smash because you can kind of train them as like an NPC and everything, and they would kind of learn your fighting styles, which was cool.
Well, Melee just trained us. What were you getting? You were getting little figurines. And then they started releasing little figurines. And you're like, I got to get all of those. It's like Smash.
I got to collect them. I'm hardwired to do this now.
I was trained, got to catch them all. But now Pokemon doesn't say that anymore. And it hasn't transferred my addiction to something else. I need to displace it into something else. Hello, Amiibo.
See, this was their plan the whole time. They set up Melee, they set up Pokemon, and they instill these collector mentalities in us, and they got us.
We've connected the dots.
Dots.
And now we've adjusted the slider, and it turns out there's more dots they were just hiding behind in the third dimension.
Yeah. I should also shout out, because it still exists in some forms for the Switch as well, but DS Download and Play, which started with the DS,
Yeah.
the 3DS, like being able to play Mario Kart or other multiplayer games because one other person had it and the other consoles could download it. Like, I think it's one of the most brilliant features, and I'm glad that a bunch of Switch games have it, and how they've talked about a bunch of Switch 2 games are going to have it. I think it's just, don't make everyone buy a copy of the game if those other people aren't going to play it that much, right? Like, having this kind of accessibility, I think, is always important. It's one of these consoles, though, that like when it came out, it looked like it was going to be a failure, right? Only a handful of launch titles. People were really leery of the cost.
Price drop within the first year and everything.
Yeah.
But all it took was a worse home console to make it the Prince.
Honestly, the price drop was real big.
Yeah. I mean, that's when the three of us got it, was after the price drop. And like, I have friends who bought a launch 3DS, is in the ambassador program, has all those games, which is awesome. I do wish that as they closed down the eShop, they maybe sold the ambassador pack or something. Like, they allowed you to buy those games like whole hog for $50, $100, whatever it is. Like, I would have done it. It was a bummer that like the only way to get Metroid Fusion, which again, my favorite Metroid game, on the 3DS was to be in the ambassador program. They never sold it on that console at any point.
But on the other hand, I appreciate that they kept that promise. There's so many things where, as far as games go, how much money could they have made selling that? Probably a lot. But they also really did we apologize to the fact that we're price matching here. This is the best way we can price match early adopters. We don't want you to feel bad that you believed in our system and bought it quickly. Thank you. Here, we're never giving this to anybody else. That's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
With the Switch 2 coming out too, that there's room for like some of these 3DS games to get some more life. I mean, we've already seen like remakes of like Etrian Odyssey and Miitopia and Tamagotchi Life, like a lot of those 3DS games kind of coming back and getting new life on the Switch. So hopefully there's room for some of these other 3DS games to come back. I don't think we'd ever get like NSO 3DS. I don't think that would happen. But I can see them doing a handful of titles and bringing more of that onto Switch in this next generation too.
Yeah, for all of the 3DS titles that the three of us have been talking about bringing up, I'm sure all of us have another like 6 in the chamber ready to go. But there's still so many that we haven't played. Like, I do want to acknowledge that the 3DS is full of such good anime nonsense. Whether it was attached to a franchise or it's something like Stella Glow. I don't think that's attached to anything. That's a game I haven't played, but keeps almost getting to me. There was a concept game on the 3DS. There were so many of these that it just feels like so much noise when you look at it, but each and every one of them is worth checking out in some level and for somebody. And I hope we get the opportunity to in the future.
Yeah. I mean, there are, at least as of the Wikipedia page, 1,800 games plus.
That's
like
crazy.
1,807 games on this console. Now, it's comprised of full releases and then like eShop stuff,
titles,
and some are exclusive to certain regions, all of that. But like, that's a lot of games. It's funny, every time Geoff and I do one of these retrospectives, I go, oh, that's my favorite console. I played so many games. When we did the Game Boy Advanced episode, I was so embarrassed because I looked at the number of games, thought about all the games I had played, which I love, and there were a lot. And I was like, this is like a fraction of the library, right? Now there's only more games. There's not less games now. There's more games now. But like, there's something special, I think, about the last Nintendo exclusive handheld that maybe someday we'll go back to. Maybe we won't. Like I said, it's a double-edged sword. I love having a hybrid console, but I do miss having dedicated handhelds.
Yeah.
It's why like all the rumors about Xbox doing a handheld console like does drive me a little crazy, but also I kind of might buy it because it would be fun to have
right there with you.
a dedicated handheld Xbox. I mean, my Steam Deck is basically a dedicated handheld for a ton of stuff, but like it would just be fun to have that, right? To have a console where now it probably wouldn't, the Xbox console probably have Game Pass, would probably play console games, but like still, I love dedicated handhelds. It's taken a lot of self-control to not buy a ROG Ally or any of these other like portable PCs because I just love handheld gaming.
But those are still just portable PCs, which is playing PC gaming. And while there's a lot of indie games and there's a lot of different games that have a feel that are well suited to a handheld arena, a handheld venue, there's not going to be another device unless somebody really goes for it. I mean, really, all we've got is the Playdate right now.
Yeah, that's true.
That's kind of what's keeping the light on for a truly dedicated handheld console. I don't consider something where, are all of those aforementioned devices handheld gaming? Yes. But I do not consider them handheld gaming devices in the same way.
Like you said, portable console, portable PCs. That's essentially what they are.
Exactly. I would love to know what else is out there. There is the Playdate. Really what causes me hesitation there is its digital-only nature.
Yeah. Like there are no physical carts for it. It goes in seasons, which I think is a brilliant setup, but it just, it's not the same thing.
If there was a way to preserve that or have like a physical piece, cool, but that probably would disrupt a lot of things. It's teenage engineering, so there's...
Right. Well, and that's what's cool about the 3DS, right? If we have people that are listening that are like, well, I want to jump in on this ecosystem, it's fairly inexpensive, right? The 3DSs don't cost very much, and depending on what game you get, the games can get kind of pricey, but for the most part, 3DS games aren't too bad right now either, too. So it's like it's a good time to get into kind of that ecosystem. And again, like Matt said, 1,800 games. There's a ton of 3DS games to get here, too.
Yeah.
And if one were to maybe want to jailbreak that 3DS so they could access the defunct eShop that wouldn't be accepting your money anyway, I genuinely couldn't tell you anything else about that, but I've heard the concept before.
Rumors.
There's rumors.
Rumblings.
And you may not be able to afford the precise model of 3DS you want, but being able to get one is possible.
Yeah. It's one of those things also where like I got an analog pocket for a lot of reasons. I wanted to get back into handheld gaming. Game Boy Advance is my favorite console, but I love the classic Game Boy. Between that and the 3DS, I have the full range of Nintendo handheld games,
Yeah.
like access to them, right? I don't own them all, but between ROMs and other things, I can access them.
Right.
And that's something that I want to do more of in the coming years. I mean, my favorite version of my favorite game of all time, Chrono Trigger, is a DS game, right? Limited run with Way Forward did a reprint of the most rare Shantae game, plummeting its value, which always you love to see it, right? Make it affordable for everybody.
Yeah, accessible.
I have Pirate's Curse now, which is my favorite Shantae game, a game I had to play on the Switch at the time, which I didn't mind, but I had to buy it digitally. I have physical Switch versions of all the other games, but now I have the 3DS version of this game. I have the Game Boy Advance game of Shantae Advance, which just came out. Like, I have the full franchise, a lot of them on their original platforms. And like, I'm going to replay Shantae Pirate's Curse on the 3DS. It's one of the next 3DS games I'm going to play for reasons. I'm excited to do that. And I think ultimately the Game Boy Advance will always be my favorite console. I think it just has per capita more of my favorite games of all time on it. But as far as legendary handhelds, like, I like the DS, but it's the 3DS that I really think set the groundwork for some of the best innovations in Nintendo gaming. Again, Grezzo got their start on the 3DS making Zelda games, and now they've made some of the more iconic Zelda games on the Switch. There was a lot of that, right? Mercury Steam, again, made a Castlevania game for the 3DS, a 2D Castlevania game, and a remake of Samus Returns. Like, a lot of the other companies that Nintendo works with got to do a lot of great work on this console, and I, to this day, still think it's probably one of Nintendo's best made consoles.
Yeah, hands down.
Agreed.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
So, before we wrap up, we like to shout out our favorite game on a console. Hard to pick on this one, I think, for a lot of us. We've definitely talked about a lot of different games. I am at an impasse because I have two. Oh, no, maybe three? Okay, I can't do this, right?
It's going to keep going as you look through a list.
Well, the problem is that one of the best Mario games of all time is on this console. One of the best Zelda games of all time is on this console. One of the best Kirby games of all time is on this console. But I think if I had to pick one to impress upon people to play, even though we talked about it quite a bit, I think I have to say Kirby Planet Robobot is my favorite game on this console. It is full stop the best Kirby game ever made. Again, Forgotten Lands close second, but like, as far as taking Kirby and innovating it, the first time we ever got a real 3D Kirby game was on the Switch.
Yeah.
Everything had been 2D till that point, and all of it had been interesting, but some remakes and some samey stuff. Then to get Robobot, which just kind of blew the gaskets off on like what a Kirby game could be, I really think it paved the way for what we got after. I can't stress enough that if you want to get into the Kirby series and you've never played a Kirby game before and you want to start with the cream of the crop, you can do no better than Planet Robobot. I really can't recommend it enough. I need to shout that out as my favorite 3DS game of all time. There are many others, but this is the one I will go with.
Nice. Like that. I think for me, the quick little shout outs that I want to make, just so that they're not forgotten, are Theater Rhythm, Final Fantasy.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. Love the music. Love rhythm games. Snake Eater 3D, the Metal Gear Solid adaptation for the 3DS. Hideo Kojima likes to play around with the worlds in the games like they're toys and action figures, so it had a perfect home on 3DS. And when Snake lost binocular vision, so did you. And I appreciate that. Thank you. And yeah, no, Shovel Knight, that is my version of it. Being able to utilize all of your relics on the bottom touchscreen is such a quality of life thing that it was my first way playing Shovel Knight, that going anywhere else, I'm like, yeah, I know why you'd play it on other consoles, but I don't want to. And the fact that they actually, all of the campaigns and all of the updates, they still put them to 3DS. They put them to every console they released for, even if they were defunct at that point. And I respect the hell out of that. But if I'm going to say a favorite, it's going to be Persona Q, Shadow of the Labyrinth. Sure. It's good for Persona fans. It's good for Etrian Odyssey fans. It's good for people who like one but don't know the other. It's a good dungeon crawler. It really utilizes the touchscreen as far as scratching that itch of making maps, making marks, and just kind of messing everything up in a fun little way. It utilized play coins, which was a currency that you would accrue by walking around with your 3DS. If you wanted to unlock a treasure chest that was on each floor that you had to fill out your map in order to unlock it, or you could pay a percentage of unfilled map through coins, which was a fun little thing for convenience. But again, like a lot of this stuff, unnecessary, but fun. Persona Q2 is also a lot of fun, but Persona Q has the English cast, and there's a lot of fun back and forth and conversation that goes on in battle between the characters. And I like the characters, and I like hearing those things go on. They improve a lot of gameplay in the sequel, but the first one's my favorite.
So I'll give some quick shout outs to a couple of them. Pokemon Sun, this generation of Pokemon, I actually have a lot of fun and nostalgia for. And I can see why a lot of people bounced off of this game.
Yeah, I'm one of them. I bought Sun day and date, and like I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
And you know what? To this day, Jared, I couldn't tell you why. Like,
Yeah.
There was something about it.
I like it. It wasn't my favorite, but I like it.
It was.
I really
It was a
liked
kind of different direction, right? This was the first time they went away from gyms. They did the totems and the trials, which glorified gyms, but it was different, right? The whole vibe felt different. Also, the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon mitigate this, but Jesus Christ, it takes you like an hour before you get your starter in that game, and that's too damn long. That is too damn long. But
The beans were fun, though.
Yes, for sure. But it has one of my favorite stories in games. If you've played through this, you get the whole dynamic of Lusamine and Gladion and Lily and everything. That is a unique dynamic that I hadn't seen a lot of stories play with, of like this mother and her idea of perfection, needing her life to be perfect, and how that idea can bleed into your children, and your children never feeling good enough and always feeling like they're less than. They have to go up to this expectation from their mother. And that was a super cool story dynamic that I was not expecting from a Pokemon game. So I have a lot of nostalgia for Pokemon Sun and that story.
Well, and you recorded a side quest all about it.
Yeah, I did, which is probably why I enjoyed it so much.
No, absolutely. If you didn't bring it up, I was going to shout it out because, folks got to know.
Yeah. The other game that I wanted to give a shout, because I wanted to do some lesser known ones than some of the Zeldas and the Pokemons, but I loved Ever Oasis. I don't know if you guys ever played Ever Oasis.
Never got a chance to.
It's a lot of fun. It was a new IP, and it sucks that it didn't kind of go anywhere. It was from the brainchild from the creators of Secret of Mana and everything, and it was kind of this action RPG / town builder where you kind of were creating your little desert oasis and were trying to survive there, and would go out and do dungeons and fight in your like little 3-party system. You got new characters that had like elemental abilities and everything like that. But it was fun. It was a ton of fun, and one that definitely stuck out to me on the 3DS.
It was also a later release, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Oh wow, I didn't realize this was 2017. Oh no, this is not 2017. This is when this article was written. Ever Oasis came out.
No,
it was 2017.
It was 2017.
July. Also, Grezzo developed as well.
Yeah, this was released after the Switch had been released. I remember reading about it in articles where people were like, the 3DS is dying and it just got its best game.
Yeah. So Ever Oasis is a great one if you have not checked it out. But I think I have to give my favorite to A Link Between Worlds. It is probably I'm right there with Matt, where Minish Cap is my favorite top-down Zelda. I played it for the first time last year, and it skyrocketed to the top of my favorite top-down Zeldas. Minish Cap is fucking. Minish Cap is so good. Minish Cap was so good. But Link Between Worlds is right there. It's right there as like my number 2. Yeah. I do think I like this better than A Link to the Past. I think A Link to the Past has a lot of history, it has a lot of important things it does for the Zelda franchise. I do have nostalgia for it. Going back to it, I don't think a lot of that holds up as much, but I think A Link Between Worlds mitigates a lot of the issues that I had with A Link to the Past, and again, creates this very unique style of being able to tackle this world and solve these puzzles however you want, which I love seeing as like small little breadcrumbs leading into things like Breath of the Wild and ultimately now Echoes of Wisdom. And I also have memories with it. This was the first Zelda game my wife had played, and it was fun to kind of like watch her play through this and fight Ganon at the end. And funny enough, this trio of all of us coming together was bound to happen because my wife's name is also Sarah, which is funny.
Oh my God. Amazing.
There we go.
So it was meant to be, but yeah, Link Between Worlds is so good and for sure my favorite 3DS game.
It's one of those games that really reminds you why the top-down Zelda games are so good. I think the Link's Awakening remake does a good job of that as well. And even Echoes of Wisdom, which ultimately I really like, but I don't think is as good. Some apps to shout out because I forgot when we were talking about apps. There was my favorite eShop game, was a mobile game that I played more on the eShop. I don't know if you guys remember Cut the Rope.
Oh, yeah.
The
little green monster, the candy and everything. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I played it on the phone all the time, and then it came to the 3DS.
That's so
and that's
funny.
the only way I played it. There were 2 of them. They were great. I love them. Also, Dylan's Rolling Western, there's no game like that game. I think it got ported to the Switch at one point, but it's such a unique concept. It's really interesting characters. There are so many games, I think, like that on the 3DS that we could be shouting them out all night. Ultimately, it's gotten me really nostalgic for this console that, by the way, I haven't charged in maybe 6 months and still has most of its battery. There's just no battery life like the 3DS.
That's what I was surprised about when this last week or two, when I took it out of the box of old consoles I have. I could not tell you the last time I charged this thing or played this thing, and it still had a charge. I mean, after playing a little bit, it started to die, and I have it plugged in right now. But the fact that it was still alive after almost years of not being played is kind of crazy.
I will specify, if you leave it on standby, the battery will drain.
Yes.
Yes, correct.
The Vita's got a better standby battery, but the 3DS, if you're turning it off in between, no, that thing will hold on to charge.
It'll last forever. It'll last forever for you.
Jared, thank you for joining us to talk about the 3DS. Before we start to wrap up, do the full pitch of where you can be found online, where Play Along Pod can be found online. We're grateful to have you here. Geoff shouted out your episode 340, where you talked about Pokemon Sun, and then your first side quest was episode 217, where you did Kenna Bridge of Spirits.
Another great
We've got to
game.
get you back for another one.
Yeah.
Please tell folks where to find Play Along and you online.
Yeah, well, thank you so much both for having me on. It was an honor to be here to talk 3DS, and I'm excited because now I'm probably just going to ignore my backlog and play more 3DS games, so that's going to be fun. Play Along Pod you can find anywhere you find podcasts. Honestly, wherever you're listening to this, you can probably find Play Along Podcast as well. At the moment this is coming out, we're probably still deep in our Citizen Sleeper series. We've been playing through that. Another fantastic indie game. And I think probably the week that this does come out, Ben, one of my other co-hosts, his Get Wrecked episode is coming out, and he's going to be joined with Eric from Unlockables, another friend of the show. And they're going to be talking about Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy IX. So,
wow.
Heavy hitters for sure. Two fantastic games. I think Ben's playing Final Fantasy IX for the first time and Eric playing Chrono Trigger for the first time too. So that'll be a fantastic episode. If you're interested in either of those, please go check it out because it's going to be a good time. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you for joining us. This discussion would have been fun, but it wouldn't have been the same without you.
Without a doubt. And we'll definitely have you back, Jared. We'd love to have your co-host. Someday I'll get the two of them to also do side quest episodes. Ben and I have talked about it.
Yeah, good luck getting Kai on there.
Yeah, that's fine. We all love Kai.
Yes.
As curmudgeonly as he is, we still love him. So we turn it to you, listener, as we always do. What are some of your favorite 3DS games? Did you have a 3DS? Did you not? Do you lament and wish you could? If you did have one, though, what are some of your favorites? What's the weirdest 3DS game you had? Because those can be some of the most fun conversation pieces.
There were so many games that we know, so many that we mentioned. I mean, recommend to me some of the Level 5 Guild Series games. I've been curious about those forever. I haven't played a single one of them. If you think those are amazing, please take me to task over that. Take any of us about that. One of the reasons I love retrospective episodes for this is that I get so many new recommendations. We get to hear so many great memories from all of you. And so this should be no exception. Please. Streetpass may be dead, but communication isn't. Let us know. Reach out to us. There's so many great ways to get in touch. We are Fun and Games Pod across all social media that we are active upon as of this episode, which is Blue Sky, Instagram, and Tumblr. You can email us at funandgamespod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this episode, what you thought of previous episodes, what you'd like us to talk about, and who you'd like us to talk with on future episodes. Send us pictures of your 3DS collection. Do you have a trail of broken 3DSs in your wake that you just can't bring yourself to get rid of, like me? Send us a picture of them. I want to know because I feel for all of them, and I feel for you that you had to keep going through that because it's never easy. It's such a good system. You can visit certainpov.com and find not only other fantastic Certain POV podcasts, but a permanent invite link to our Discord server where a lot of these discussions continue, topics begin, and game logs are discussed. If you like what we do and want to support us and have the means to, or if you just want a one-stop shop of all the things Matt and I are working on, you can visit our Patreon, patreon.com/funandgamespod. There is a free tier. We're going to be putting up a poll when this episode goes up for our next console retrospective. If you want to help us choose what our next console retrospective is, you've got to be on the Patreon to do it. We also want to thank all of those that have the means and the want to support us, that have allowed us to do a lot of amazing and fun things, especially those up at the high scoreboard. Today, the high scoreboard is Alex Lavelle, Case Aiken, Daniel Nyden, Alejandro Alves, Chris Copleen, Curly Bright, Film It Yourself, Patrick Edwards, Robert Prine, and Sean Bowen. Thank you so much for your support. Please enter your initials. Hi, I'm Geoff from New York City. Happy gaming. And that is, for those of you who don't know, a Streetpass thing.
Streetpass reference, yeah. Jokes are always funnier when you have to explain them.
I also realized I was signing off the podcast while doing it, and that's why I suddenly backpedaled.
Of course, a free way that you can help us and any podcast that you enjoy is go to Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Spotify, anywhere you can rate and review a podcast, and please do it. I try and do it on every platform for the podcasts I listen to, but seriously, if you want a free way to do it besides joining the Patreon at the free tier, you can rate and review us. So when people start looking for podcasts discussing the 3DS, we jump to the top of the list and conquer the almighty algorithm.
And that truly is the greatest final boss of them all. And whether you are helping us fight that final boss, whether you are on the Discord, whether you are on the Patreon, or whether this is your first episode of Fun and Games, thank you so much for being here. We couldn't do this without you. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
Hey, Jay.
Hey, Jim.
You're a fan of the Legion of Superheroes, right?
Yeah, I've been reading their adventures for decades.
Me too. It was tough at first with all the characters, but now I think I'm an expert.
It's not too hard to get into the Legion. And to make it even easier, we have a podcast called Long Live the Legion. We talk about different aspects of all its history to help you out.
So whether you're a new reader in the Legion Academy, or have your own flight ring, or anywhere in between, a Long Live the Legion podcast should be on your playlist.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.